One of the most important traditions that we have is one of lasting knowledge. We have a very strong intellectual legacy in our deen, in our Islamic studies, and in secular studies as well. Islam, Muslims, and the Islamic civilization was at the pinnacle and forefront, at the zenith of scientific discovery, and also of preserving and maintaining this deen. And so we have a very strong academic legacy. One of the places where that was embodied was Baghdad, in a place called the House of Wisdom, Baytul Hikmah. Also in Cairo and Cordoba and in Persia, all across the Islamic world, also in places like Bukhara, Samarkand. This is a legacy that we still have, but we're missing something. We're missing a cohesive and unified place where we can explore and further expound upon this legacy of Baytul Hikmah, of scientific discovery, of Islamic revival. We're going to talk about something that may seek to change that. If you remember MIC, one of the original aims of MIC was to have a family life center, which alhamdulillah we're developing, and to have a place where you can explore that legacy and expand upon that legacy of Islamic discovery and scholarship. And so in keeping with this, we have two very distinguished speakers. You know Dr. Bashar Shala. He's been an integral member of this community. He's given lectures on that Islamic legacy that we have. And he's going to be talking, inshallah, about some of that. And then we have Dr. Imaz al-Qadir, who is an up-and-coming young physician. He's a surgery resident right now, who's part of this is kind of his brainchild. And we have other folks helping too who are sitting in the audience. So without further ado, Dr. Bashar, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وفقها في الدين يا رب العالمين. So as Sean said, Islam and Islamic culture presented a very major contribution to the culture of the world, to the world civilization. And sometimes this gets distorted, and then we get this legacy being manipulated by certain, Western historians, speaking of the Western civilization as the center of all modern luxury and modern civilization that we live in. But we need to remember as Muslims where we were and where we came from, and then with the young generation, inshallah, with the effort that we see here, where we're going to go to. Because if we don't understand our past and our foundation, then we wouldn't understand which direction we should be going to. So this is the small talk about that the human civilization is based on different contribution from different cultures. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we as Muslims, we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَى وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. And the word ta'aruf means to know each other, but also to exchange knowledge. And that's why Islam was a very fertile ground for science and for culture to develop. So Islam was part of the different cultures and different civilizations that this world have seen. And as you can see there on the screen, we know about the ancient cultures before Islam. the Roman, whether it's the Western Roman or the Eastern Roman, the Byzantine culture, the Greek cultures before that, the ancient Indian civilizations, the Chinese, the Persians, and the Islam came when the world was going through major what they called the Dark Ages, because civilizations were at a crisis, and Islam took the banner. Islam is the reason that the Western civilization today had the works of Plato, Aristotle, and many of these other ancient Greek and Roman philosophers and scientists. And Islam played a contribution in that. Actually, if you've ever been to Disney World, Epcot Center, and you ride this Earth spaceship, have you ever, you know what I'm talking about? It gives us history of the world and how the world progresses. And they will say that if it is not for the Muslims, and if it's not for the Muslims carrying and translating the world, the works of the ancient Greeks and Romans, it would have been lost and lost forever. So Islam had some major contribution to that. But how do we define culture? Culture can be language, religion, social customs, architecture, and then science and innovation, as well as, cuisine, industry, agriculture. All of that is the culture that Islam contributed to. So the point is, there is undeniable contribution of the Islamic culture to what we do every day today. And I will show how, I will just bring some examples to show you that Islam had contribution to everything, and a lot of the innovations and the technology that we use today on day-to-day basis. So if we start with mathematics. So we know that the numbers that we use today, what do they call them? The Arabic numerals, right? Because they came from the Muslim civilization, carried from India, and then transferred to the Western civilization and the world civilization through Muslim scholars and Muslim math experts. So, one of the major contribution is the use of zero. The concept of zero, that may sound really a very simple thing, but that was a major leap in understanding math and in developing math when the Arab and the Muslim cultures basically innovated the zero. And when you look at the Webster dictionary, they will say the word zero came from Arabic word of sifr. That's how it started, and of course it got distorted with the accent. And if you just even look at the major math branches like algebra, algorithms, these are words that starts with the Arabic language and the Arabic language was not necessarily the language of the Arabs at that point. It was the language of the Islamic culture. So a lot of these scientists were not actually of Arab origin, but they were Muslims, and they were carried the Muslim culture, like Al-Khwarizmi. Al-Khwarizmi is actually one of the scientists that developed algebra and algorithm. And we know without the concept of 1 and 0, without algorithms, we don't have computers. We don't have smartphones. We don't have innovations. So their contribution was immeasurable. In astronomy, the Muslim scholars excelled. Actually, even if you look at the celestial objects in the sky, the stars and the galaxies, a lot of them have Arabic names, because of the advancement of the Muslim culture in astronomy. The innovation of the astrolabe in navigation and in geography. The compasses, development of compasses. And then many of the Muslim scholars of astronomy and geography had contributed in major way. Even Al-Bayruni, and he deserves a whole talk by himself, had actually described how the earth rotates on its axis. And that was 600 years before Galileo. So they were way ahead of their time and ahead of their culture. Al-Idrisi developed, you can see this map. It may look different, but if you compare this to the actual maps that the world had at that time, this is as close as you can get to what you can see of the known world: Europe, Asia, and Africa. And to know when that was developed, you understand how advanced those Muslim scholars were. Now come to the topic that all three of us are physicians, so we're going to talk about medicine probably a lot. Muslims had major advancement in the use of anesthesia, while medicine in Europe, when you wanted to do a procedure or something on somebody, you basically tie them up with ropes and you put a little bit of a cloth in their mouth so they don't scream. Muslims had actually innovated the use of different things like opioids and different things that will actually give comfort to the patient during a very painful procedure. Cleaning, cauterization of wounds was all innovated by Muslims, as well as the concept that infection comes from something that can be contagious. That is also another important thing from the Muslims. So of the Muslims, known scholars was Ar-Razi, known in the Western world as Rhazes. He was the first to diagnose and describe smallpox, measles, and to associate these diseases with contamination, with transmission of disease. He wrote the book called Al-Hawi, and that was used as the textbook at the Sorbonne University till the 1400s. So that was, and he also invented and promoted psychotherapy, the role of balanced diet. All of these seem like very modern concepts, but if you look at when he died over 1,200 years ago. So you can see how advanced that was. And then the well-known Ibn Sina, or in the West is known Avicenna, his book Al-Qanun, or the doctrine, the law of medicine, was used as the main medical textbook in all medical schools for over 500 years. And this is how Muslims were contributing to that. I am sitting next to a surgeon, and this is about Al-Zahrawi. Al-Zahrawi, this is also, he's over 1,000 years ago. When Al-Zahrawi, he was born in Andalus, in Muslim Spain, and was known as the chief surgeon. And you can see, this is actually a Latin copy of the book of Al-Zahrawi. And you can see scalpels, retractors, things that our surgeons use today. And they were developed by Al-Zahrawi over 1,000 years ago. Of course, the shape of the instrument and the material of it developed, but you can look at those pictures and you can see that the concept of those surgical instruments were there. And it is just really mind-boggling and amazing that Al-Zahrawi was operating on people 1,200 years ago. In social sciences, Ibn Khaldun, he is really considered the father of modern sociology. And you cannot really study sociology and history of the world without learning about Ibn Khaldun and his Muqaddimah, his book that it is an introduction actually to something he called the science of civilization. In physics, we talk about a scholar that is considered the true father of scientific methodology. And that is Al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham, or known as Al-Hazan. Al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham, he was a physics scholar, and we know his work is all in optics and light, and he was the first to describe the light waves and how light transmits in lines. And he made the initial concept of the camera obscura, That was all invented by Al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham. The story goes that he was jailed or in under house arrest, and he was in a dark room, and then he only had like a small hole where the light comes in, and then he sees a picture of what's outside upside down on the wall when the light comes in. And he started developing a hypothesis that why is this happening? Started analyzing that, and then when he came out of that jail, out of that prison, he started conducting experiments. And then he did the studies on lights and lenses, and if it's not for Al-Hasan al-Haytham, we would not have glasses, we wouldn't have telescopes, we wouldn't have a lot of things. But more important than that is the method that he used to reach those conclusions. This scientific method, I was just by randomly, I was listening. I'm a nerd. I listen to a lot of BPS documentaries. So I was listening to one, and they were talking about the development of science in the world. And the presenter of that documentary couldn't stop talking about Al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham. And he said 500 years before Kepler, before Galileo, before Sir Isaac Newton. A lot of that program was about Isaac Newton, the father of modern physics, right? He said before all of that, 500 years, Al-Hasan al-Haytham put the foundation. And this is not our words as Muslims, this is the world testimony. So Al-Hasan al-Haytham, you cannot really, you cannot minimize his contribution to the scientific methodology. In chemistry, and I will go over that real quick, Jabir ibn Hayyan, they wrote the books about how to go organic chemistry, and then how to take minerals and how to work with elements, and all of that was developed. Al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham died about 1400 years ago. So these are scholars that carried the banner and had major contribution to the world science. In education, Dr. Sean said that Baytul Hikmah, Muslims developed universities, institutions of learning. That was not something, we all know about schools and universities, but that was not a concept 1,000 years ago. That was not a thing. And Muslims came with the concept of Baytul Hikmah and started, and that was in Baghdad, and that was just like an academic center, one of the earliest academic centers that the world has ever known. And there were universities in Damascus, there were universities in Cairo, there were universities in Cordoba and Tunisia and Morocco. And there's a lot of documents, and the time is very limited, that the nobility of Europe during the pre-Renaissance era, if they want their children to go get education, they don't send them. There was no Harvard, there was no Oxford, but there was the University of Cordoba, there was Al-Qayrawan. There were the schools of Morocco. There was the Dar al-Hikmah in Baghdad. That's where they would come. They would actually learn Arabic. They will study in Arabic, and they will go to Europe, and they will translate that into Latin. And that's how Muslims contributed to the development of universities and schools. Architecture, there's nothing, just wanted to show a few examples from east to west in the Muslim world. The Muslim world spread from Spain to China. And you can see the Western architecture, the Eastern architecture, the Middle Eastern architecture, and this is, of course, Alhambra, and then the Turkish, the Ottoman later on continue to carry the banner. Now, one of the measures, and I will conclude with that, is how culture is affected by another culture is if you have words borrowed and used every day from that culture. And I will just say a few words that we use every day that came directly from the Islamic, and of course the Arabic language is just part of the Islamic heritage. Coffee. Coffee is an Arabic word. If you don't believe me, go to the dictionary, either Oxford or Webster, and there will be something called etymology, where the word came from. The word coffee came from the word Arabic qahwa, and then came to kave, cafe, and then coffee. So it transmits. So this is really the coffee is an invention from Yemen, right? How many Yemeni brothers here? The best coffee in the world is called Arabica. Where did that come from? From the mountains of Yemen. Soda. I wish we patent that invention, you know. And again, you go from, it came from Italian, but it came the original Arabic word soda or sawad because of the carbonated and how you would use the ashes and then sodium carbonate and then how you develop carbonated drinks. And why do we have Coca-Cola? Because in the South there were some Muslims from West Africa that brought this invention to the rest of the world. And like I said, I wish they just patented and developed that. You heard the word candy, right? You think candy is an English word or a Western word. Al-Qandi is the first area in the Middle East, actually, in Cyprus. Cyprus was a Muslim place called Al-Qandi, and Al-Qandi used to take the plants, make sugar out of it, and make sweets out of it, and that's how it went to Europe. That's how Europe was introduced to sweets and candy and dessert, and that's why it's called candy, because it came from Al-Qandi, which is the Muslim place. Words like Al-Qutn, cotton, Al-Qudun, again, you see that the fabric, the development of that, the agriculture all came from even a sofa. A sofa, you may think it's an English word. It's a purely Arabic word. We know Ahlul Suffa, right? From our Islamic heritage, those who used to sit on the bench in the Masjid of Rasulullah. Well, that's where that word came from, and we do use it every day. Other words like syrup, sharab, and that's also came from the Arabic. Magazine, alkali, alkaline, and nader. All of these are Arabic words. All those words that starts with al came from also the Muslim culture. Alcohol, algebra, algorithms. When I give this talk in like Rhodes University or University of Memphis, I tell them I apologize profusely for that, because the students there hate algebra and they hate algorithm. So why do we have that in our culture? Because Islam promotes learning. Islam, in its core foundation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala challenges us in the Quran to look at what's around us, to derive and to learn. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam told us to seek therapy and healing. Tadawaw ibadallah. Seek dawa, seek the medicine, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a cure, a therapy for every disease except old age and except death. So the Islam by itself is the main reason why Muslims had all of these contributions. But there is something in poetry says, إن الفتى من يقول ها أنا ذا ليس الفتى من يقول كان أبي. That the true person, the true man, the strong person is the one that will say, here I am. Not the one that says, my dad was, my father used to do, my grandfather used to do. Here I am, and that's where the rest of this presentation is about, is how do we go back to being where we are? How do we tell the world, here we are, as a culture, as a civilization, as Muslims that want to continue to contribute to the advancement of science, to the advancement of modernity, and to culture on day-to-day basis. So I will stop here and let our brothers here, the young ones, the old is finished, and now we come to the new, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, we're now going to have Dr. Imaz speak more on this vision to revive that tradition. And as I said before, he is one of our young physicians. He's in general surgery residency right now, and he will speak, inshallah.
Jazakallah to everyone. Can everyone hear me? All right. Jazakallah for everyone for being here. Better? All right. Alhamdulillah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm glad that we're able to finally come forward with this vision and introduce this project to everyone in the community, alhamdulillah. It's something that we have been working on for months now. something that has been, under the counsel of many people and with a lot of rigorous planning, a lot of late nights. So alhamdulillah, we're very excited to introduce this. As Dr. Bashar just spent a couple minutes highlighting, we as a Muslim ummah descend from a deeply rich and noble Islamic intellectual history. Time and time again, Islam has given rise to eras of humanity that were marked by unparalleled development in religion, in culture, in science, in philosophy, and whatever you name. Islam has always given rises to new classes of humanity that were marked by fearless and relentless seekers of knowledge. They then became nations of brilliant scholars that were morally upright, and they were spreading brilliance in all academic disciplines. But this isn't the reality that we live in today now, is it? In fact, things haven't been like that for our people, for our ummah, for the past couple of 100 years. And if you really think about it, there's a lot of factors that go into that. There's constant turmoil, there's warfare, there's conflict, there's foreign interference within our governments. We just can't seem to catch a break. The reasons go on, but we have to acknowledge the problem. We're nowhere near where we once were. Muslims today are catching a disproportionate amount of hate, slander, discrimination, and persecution. Why? Because we look different? Because we act different? Because we aspire toward higher values and ideals than compared to everyone else in society? This pattern of worldwide hatred towards Islam, right, and Muslim, it knows no concept of race, status, gender, wealth. It's solely based off of creed. But the question is why? What is it about Islam that makes all these people spend so much time, energy, and resources plotting against our people? Islam is the most potent. It is the most powerful and electrifying force of unity that we have today. It transcends all these man-made barriers that you see today, and it unites people on a spiritual basis, moral, physical, and a mental basis. It is the utmost practical and pragmatic force of unity that we have today. And they know that. The enemies of Islam, they know that. They know that if the true revolutionary spirit of Islam was awakened within the hearts of Muslims, it'd be a very bad situation. Because the reality is, there's 2 billion of us. We're everywhere. Every society, every country, every corner of the world, we're there. And they realize that. They realize if the Muslim Ummah was to truly awaken, all of their agendas, all of the status quos would get disrupted. You simply cannot control a group of people that refuse to bow down to any person or anything in this world. You cannot control a group of people whose visions, whose aspirations lie with the divine. They're physically here, but mentally, spiritually, they're not here. You can't control a group of people like that. But before we convince anybody else, we need to convince ourselves first. What we need is a revolution. We need a revolution in the way that we think. We need a revolution in the way that we understand our religion and in our visions. A revolution is often portrayed as a process that starts and occurs outside of the home. But the reality is, a revolution starts within the home. Matter of fact, a revolution has to start within the mind and the heart. You first have to free yourself from the shackles that exist within the mind and the heart before you can see reality for what it is. We as Muslims, we need to rise up. We as Muslims need to become the awakened group of people that we were meant to be. And don't do it because I'm saying it or anybody else here is saying it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in chapter 3, verse 110, He says, "Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas." You are the best community ever raised for humanity. But you can't achieve that simply by being born into Islam or converting to Islam. It takes work. It takes hard work. It takes vision. It takes planning. And it takes a lot of sacrifice. There's a study that I wanted to share with everyone here. And this is how we get into the crux of the discussion today. And this is an international study, a very large study that was studying where research is being published from across the world. Who is producing the world knowledge that we have today? There's no escaping the fact that there was a time where our people, and Dr. Bashar did an excellent job highlighting this, there was a time where our people laid the foundations of every academic subject area that is known to people today. But we also have to recognize the reality, we're not even a fraction of that. We're so far away from that. But forget the data of the past few centuries. The pattern is the same. We're going to focus on one single year, the year of 2018. In the year of 2018, there was a total of roughly 3,946,933 publications. And this is in all academic areas. Law, medicine, surgery, all the sciences, the humanities. And this is a summation of everything every country in this world has produced in the year of 2018. So naturally, when you see such a figure, the question you want to ask yourself, how much of this is being produced by Muslims? How much of this is being produced by Muslim countries? Right? That's what I care about, and that's what we need to care about. We need to develop that mindset as a collective. So I did some digging because I wanted to quantify that data for you. Here is a table I created. These represent the top 10 countries in the year of 2018 alone. Top 10 countries that produced the most publications. These were the countries that were producing the most data, the most knowledge that runs our world today. And look, let's just look at the list here. Number 1, USA, China, UK, Germany, India, Japan, France, Italy, Canada, Australia. Which one of those countries is Muslim? Which one of those countries has a significantly Muslim population? None of them. These 10 countries alone, if you look in the bottom right of that table, accounted for almost 62% of the knowledge that was produced across the world. These 10 countries alone. You dig deeper into the study, and 38%, the remainder 38% of the world knowledge that was produced by 223 countries combined. Combined. At one hand, you have 10 countries. The other hand, you have 223 countries. But we haven't answered our question yet. How much of this was by Muslims? How much of this was by Muslim nations? Roughly, give or take, there are about 57 Muslim majority countries in the world. And they accounted for 8.29% of the world knowledge that was produced. 8.29% of the knowledge. This is not even close to the foundations, to the legacy, to the history that we descend from. But this is where we are. And this is just 1 year alone. We have to realize the kind of image our enemies have projected of us to the rest of the world. This image of Islam and Muslims across the world has been intentionally portrayed in a very negative light. And we have no control of that. We're not the ones writing our own narrative. We're not the ones that are writing history. These people have labeled our people as uncivilized, oppressive, violent, behind the times, in need of reform, a group of people that need to be civilized and catch up with the times. Unfortunately, when you have this much negativity, this much negative portrayal of our people, this is not a phenomenon that stays on the outside. Eventually, it starts penetrating the hearts of Muslims. And this is the phenomenon that we live in today. Our people are in nearly every subject area of study that you can think of. They're in almost every institution you can think of. But what happened? Muhammad became Mo. Ahmad became Ahmed. The way that we act, the way that we speak, the way that we dress, the things we aspire to, everything changed. Because all of this negativity started penetrating our hearts. You and I became embarrassed of Islam. We began to feel afraid to express it, to represent it. We felt inferior because of it. And that's why we made all those changes. We gave up the single part of our identity that gave us dignity and honor in the first place. For what? For what? They say that Islam has a space in society as long as its spiritual ideas are separated from its social, political, and economic ideas. They say that Islam is a thing of the past, that it has nothing left to contribute to Islam, to modern society anymore. All these allegations combined, they made us feel inferior. They made us feel inadequate, helpless. And when we fell victim to these feelings of inadequacy and inferiority, we turned to someone else to show us the way. We turned away from our scholars, we turned away from our legacy, our history, and we turned to somebody else to show us the way. Where once we led the world in bringing these elements into existence in the most dignified of manners, we wouldn't even dare do such a thing now. Because we feel helpless. And what makes us feel helpless is our hatred for ourselves. And our hatred for ourselves stems from the insecurity that we have about Islam. This is exactly what we want to change. We want to write our own history. We want to write our own narrative. We want to revive our legacy. It is my honor, it is our honor to introduce you the new organization that we're launching, inshallah, called House of Wisdom. This is exactly the mission that it stands for. We want to increase the representation of Muslims and Islam in all of academia. Every subject area, it is not enough for us to simply exist there. We have to change the type of presence that we have. We have to put Islam at the forefront and not the back end. That is what we want to do. So who are we? We're an organization that wants to reclaim the lost Islamic intellectual legacy and pioneer a new Islamic intellectual revolution. Our mission, our purpose is twofold. We want to revive our history. We want to recount all the intellectual contributions that we have made to all these different fields. And we want to engage that through presentations, through research, through publications. But recounting the glories of the past is meaningless unless that past is used to inspire the future. And that leads us to our second mission. We want to start this revolution by pioneering new Islam-inspired research and intellectual endeavors within the sciences and humanities. This covers almost every subject area that you and I studied in school, that our kids study in school today. And our organization, inshallah, will have three primary components: annual academic conferences, a mentorship program, and a research grants program. The first conference, inshallah, will be in July. It will be July 29th and 30th, and I really recommend that everybody registers as soon as possible because spots are limited. And it will happen here in Memphis. Memphis will be the headquarters of this vision. And it will happen here at MIC because we want to be consistent with our legacy where all of these conversations, all of this legacy talk, all of this history was being revived in masajid. So this is where we want to start it all. So this will be a conference that will gather the best and the brightest Muslim minds, not just in the United States. Inshallah, we want all over the world. But we want everyone to come together under one roof, engage in a series of lectures, conversations, panels, and workshops about our intellectual legacies, our intellectual contributions, and use that as a way to think, how do we pave this path forward? How do we use this to now revive the next tomorrow that we have? And the next two components, these are examples that we derive from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, where every step that you take, you must think of your tomorrow. This vision that we have, this vision, this project that we're presenting to you today, it's not a vision for 1 year, it's not a vision for 2 years, it's a vision for decades to come. Because what we are talking about takes entire lifetimes and generations to achieve. And because of that, it is important for us to get our youth involved. High schoolers, college students, and grad students. We are designing a mentorship program, inshallah, where all these students can register and get connected with people that already exist in all these academic spaces so that they can engage in the proper conversations, the writings, the lectures, all of that, so that now their radar, their whole way of thinking is shifting. They're now thinking, what can I do not for myself but for my deen? What can I do not for myself but for my people? If this is a project, if this is a career path, if this is a project that is not aligned with my deen or my people, I don't want it. That's the generation that we are seeking to create. Inshallah, our research grants program. I think too often we dwell on, when it comes to matters of deen and matters of our people, we dwell on the goodwill and the free time of people to get things done. We want to get away from that model. And honest, that's not the legacy that we descend from either. And Sean can speak more to that, but we descend from a legacy of awqaf, established institutions of charity and endowment. Our goal is, at our first conference, inshallah, in July, we want to give out $50,000 worth of research grants to different people with defined objectives so that we can achieve quantifiable results. Because our goal is, between this conference and our next conference, inshallah, we want to have 50 manuscripts that are Islam inspired, that are either in the works, have been submitted for publication, or have been published. This is a flyer for our upcoming conference, inshallah. Again, you can use this QR code to register. You don't want to miss this. There are over 20 speakers coming, and all of these speakers have been handpicked, not because they may have like a great reputation or they're very well known. We didn't care about that. We want to protect our vision at all costs. These are people, shuyukh, physicians, mathematicians, physicists, lawyers, history professors, all astronomers, academics and professionals from nearly 10 different backgrounds are coming, inshallah. And we are intentionally engineering the audience of this to include high school students, college students, and grad students. Because, again, what we're after is an intellectual revolution, a movement. This is not a conference that's going to be a social gathering. It's not a gathering that everyone comes in, engages in lectures and panels, feels good, and goes home. If that is the case, we would consider that a failure. We want this to be a gathering of movers and shakers, of thinkers, of people that are concerned about shaping our tomorrow. And lastly, we have another initiative, inshallah, that is built into this conference called the Muslim Legacy Fair. If you are a parent of a high school kid or a college kid, please, please, please encourage them to go on our website and sign up for this. It's an initiative that we will have, inshallah, at our conference, where these kids will compete against one another. They'll have presentation about Muslim intellects and thinkers of the past. They will compete against each other. There will be a judging process. There'll be prizes. But it's a way for us to get our youth involved and have them fully immersed into this legacy. Because a person that does not know his history will not know where he's going tomorrow. And we have to start them off young, because otherwise it's a very scary world out there. They don't care about us. They don't care about where we come from. Our legacy, our history is meaningless to them. They are intentionally wiping that away. This is not just a recreational endeavor. This is a major vision to protect our ummah, to protect our tradition, to protect our deen, and to protect our people. We as an ummah, we do not have the luxury of being mediocre. That the responsibility that rests upon our shoulders as Muslim is far too great for us to not have grand aspirations and grand visions for this world and in the hereafter. We as a community here in Memphis, I don't know how else to say it outside of the fact that we're built different. It's Memphis. The people, the Islam, the resources, the unity, all of it is so different from everywhere else. I was born and raised in Chicago. I spent years out in D.C., some time out in Boston, some time out in California. I'm telling you, this is different. There's a reason why we are starting this whole project and vision in Memphis. We must become the change that we seek in tomorrow. We just have to. We cannot afford any other way. We must become the visionaries that leave behind a legacy that history will remember forever. Jazakallah for your time. I'll give it back to Sean.
Takbir. 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 Jazakallah khair. That was very inspiring, mashallah. And I've heard him talk a lot. Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, the goal is to build on that legacy, like Imaz said. And we do want to leave some time for questions and answers, but remember, it is paramount to us as Muslims, as people of deen, to seek knowledge of this deen and knowledge that can help us represent the deen. We have so many people in so many fields. You already know how many physicians we have. We have people in law, in engineering, in IT, in art, in civil studies. Bringing them together under one roof will give us that opportunity to realize this potential, inshallah, step by step, incrementally. This conference is not just for professors or people who go to college. It's for you. It's for me, but it's for you. It's for all of us as Muslims. Spread the word about this. We have to start at some point, and this is a foundation stone that we can lay, upon which, inshallah, we can build something great. And if we're good enough, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, try to own that legacy that we have and be a part of it. So, let's open up the floor for questions. What kind of questions do you guys have? Because I've got some here that have been sent. Does anybody have any questions? Sisters, brothers? Yes. Iqbal.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakumullah khair for the great presentation, and really wish you good luck on this new organization that you guys are coming up. The question is, when I was listening to Dr. Bashar, all these things, the modern science, the basis of that is all coming from the Muslim, So what happened? Where did we go wrong? Where we were on the front line and now we're at the end of the line. What happened?
There you go. It's back on. Like Imazil said, there's so many things that happen along the way to change the course of the Muslim countries where a lot of these things flourished, and that's more of like a history political conversation. But what I want to point out something that we saw how the Muslim countries contributed about 8% to the world research and knowledge and science. But the other thing that is not accounted for here is the actual contribution of Muslims. Like in the United States, we said the United States by itself contributed 17% to the world in 2018 to the research. But how many Muslim scientists work here in the United States and produce research and science? How many, like right here in Memphis, I mean, we have, research institutions at the University of Tennessee. We have St. Jude. I mean, I know myself how many people that work in research and contribution in those areas. So it is not because we as Muslims, as people, as individuals are behind or not culture, we don't have the scientific, and actually the opposite. You can see probably a disproportionate number of Muslims in those fields than you would do other people. But what happened is our geopolitical structures, we have a decay in there. We have to realize that. But what we are talking about here is not that. We cannot go change countries, but we can rechannel the energy of the Muslim minds and the youth and the people that are interested in this to present a brand of science, brand of advancement, brand of technology that is uniquely Muslim, that has the idea of Islam. So that's and then Imaz can comment more on that, because you can see the energy, mashallah. I mean, it's contagious. How can you, when he asked me to be part of it and participate, I mean, how can you not, when you see someone so dedicated and so energetic and wants to really, and they have a vision, they have a very clear vision. I can't claim I'm actually part of that, but I'm very touched by it, and I'm willing to do whatever we can, inshallah, to advance that. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think to back what Dr. Bashar was saying, there's a lot of factors that go into it. Again, even the research output that we're talking about, alhamdulillah, there's a responsibility that we have as citizens and people that reside here. We have a degree of comfort. We have a degree of stability, both economic, social, all of those factors, that we don't have to necessarily face the same circumstances as people that come from the countries that are currently in the countries that we all come from. And so we have to take advantage of that. The stability that we have. Even like Dr. Bashar was saying, almost every hospital that you go to, there's Muslim physicians there. There's a musalla there. They're meeting for Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, because they're there at work every day. But what happens is a lot of the work that they do, even as a lot of it is redirect, the credit of it is given to the institution. The credit of it is given to everything but Muslims. But see, you even look at the primary manuscripts of Zahrawi or people like Ibn Sina, or like the hundreds of people that reside in that era. Their research, although it was completely somewhat unrelated to what's being discussed within the strictly Islamic subjects, but the inspiration for that research will start off with a Quranic ayat or a hadith that they came across, and then that idea came to them. And they'll mention it. Every manuscript, it starts off with something related to Islam. And then from there on, they go. We have the potential. We just need to redirect it, like Dr. Bashar said. The avenue for us, we can create. The people we have, the resources we have, we just need to gather it so that all our hard work and efforts is being used to further the cause of Islam, is used to further the cause of our people.
Jazakallah khair. There was a question here.
Assalamu alaikum. This is not a question, but maybe a comment. I mean, if you look at the Islamic theology departments in the US, they're not producing very high quality Islamic scholars. And unfortunately, because the funding sources for many of these faculty doesn't come from Islamic foundations. It comes from people who want to bash Islam, who want to minimize Islam, etc. So something we can consider for the future is create funding to support faculty who are doing genuine Islamic work in theology departments. One example I can share, when Dr. Yasser Qadi was here in Memphis, when he left, Rhodes University opened up the position, and they brought many people to interview for his position, and they end up hiring a person, a Russian girl from Princeton University, not a Muslim, to teach Islamic theology. And I attended 3 presentations of 3 candidates who came interviewed for that position. It is shame, wallahi, it is shame. So that's one area that we need to strengthen, is produce high quality scholars from prestigious universities by providing funding for faculty who want to do this kind of work so they can continue to grow and flourish and produce high quality Islamic scholars.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Hassan. I mean, that's really the whole idea. If we don't organize, if we don't have that kind of forward thinking and organization and knowing how to rechannel our resources, all of these things wouldn't be possible. And I understand that probably everybody's looking like, this is way too ambitious, right? I mean, what are you talking about? Revolution in Memphis and changing the world. But remember, every really big thing starts with an idea and starts with people that are persistent with it, and start with people that are really willing to carry the banner. And we want this to become adwa, right? We want this to become contagious to other communities and other places and other organizations and spread out. But we have to start somewhere. And this vision, inshallah, will see the success, will see the day of light. And we really, I mean, as a member of the community, I'm not a true scientist. I'm a physician, but I'm not like a big researcher or anything like that. I'm very supportive of this, and I really want to have the community, and not just the people of science in the community, but everybody, the workers, the teachers, the store owners, to be behind us, because this will eventually benefit this entire ummah and will really help us fulfill that whole legacy of kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. Khayra ummah doesn't mean the best only. It means the ummah that brings the good, that brings khayr. Antum khayra ummah, you are the ummah that brings khayr to others, that will bring good to others. So we need to be in that role. We lost that role, and we want to reclaim it, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Sisters, any questions? No questions from the sisters? There was one question back here, 1 second.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is, I actually read this book last week. It's called Arabian Medicine. It was written by Mr. E.G. Brown. It's part of the Fitzpatrick lectures that they used to give at the American College of Physicians. And he was talking about a lot of the famous physicians we have, but one comment that he made in the book was that early on in Islamic medicine, medicine wasn't looked at as a very highly special topic. And a comments that he made, and then when I went and researched it, I did find out that yes, scholars and sheikhs at that time were, for example, against cadaver use in anatomy. So my question to you is, how did we kind of, as future medical professionals, how did we kind of convince the scholarly sheikh class that this is a profession field?
Sorry, just to make sure I'm understanding your question properly, your question was, how do we make sure this area of study or subject area that we're discussing here is not frowned upon by shuyukh? Oh, how do we get buy-in from shuyukh?
That's what Beit al-Hikmah is all about, is to put those minds together.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think your question, I can comment on it. I don't know if I can necessarily completely answer that, because that's a bit beyond the scope of what we're presenting, kind of aiming to achieve here. But while there was a time where there was kind of disharmony between the two, the legacy that we're trying to revive, it comes from a time where there was complete harmony between the two. There's a reason why our conference, inshallah, is including shuyukh, professionals, and academics. Because in order for all of us to be great, these three different groups, they have to be in harmony. They have to be in sync and in proper communication. So yes, I agree. I do remember the time where there was, but I really think the larger theme that was at play there was, some people were against the advancement of knowledge in particular ways that were happening at that time. But, I don't think I necessarily have all the knowledge and skills to actually answer the detailed question that you have.
Jazakallah khair.
So, I mean, the question is really good because, not only cadaver use, but so many other things like life support and organ transplants and so many things that you can seem to see a clash between science and fatawa and shuyukh and scholarly. But if we don't have an avenue, if we don't have a structure that will allow the scientific minds sit down and discuss things and conference with the fiqh, with the people that have the knowledge, how can we even begin to tackle things like that, right? So this is what really one of the reasons what we should have that channel. We should have that avenue. We should have something like Bayt al-Hikmah. So many things that will come to controversy. Not that didn't happen in the past. I don't know if you know this, but Ibn Sina was described as a heretic, as a person that left the realm of Islam, as basically some scholars made him a kafir as well. I'm not defending anything about Ibn Sina, but that debate was there. That debate was open, and that debate was scholarly. And that's the kind of things that we have to have.
I also like to add, right now, something that's receiving a lot of attention is the topic of Islamic bioethics. How to care for Muslim patients in the hospital, end-of-life care, things like that. Inshallah, we will announce our speaker and complete speaker lineup in the beginning of April, inshallah. But some of the shuyukh and physicians that are coming to our conference are those people that have been working together to establish subject matter on this particular field. And I think that's a beautiful example of what we can be, where it's shuyukh that otherwise wouldn't have had an avenue to contribute to this area, and physicians and bioethicists all coming together and writing literature to inform hospital systems all across the country about how to care for the Muslim patient. And these are people, they've engaged in extensive classes, courses, and debates to figure out the kind of material that they're now releasing to everybody else. But like Dr. Bashar was saying, this is exactly why we're creating such an avenue, because we want everybody from a general community member all the way up to academics and professionals and shuyukh and students, all of them to be able to come together, communicate, and as a result, elevate the level of discourse and the general intellect of the entire community.
Jazakallah khair. It's important to have those avenues to discuss those things, so I'm glad you brought that up. And also, if you remember when Sheikh Yasser was here, he would go to the Amja and Amja conferences, and he would talk about things like organ transplant, and when COVID happened, when he moved to Dallas, he would bring his friend who was an Islamic bioethicist in Chicago, and Amja, the scholars, would get people, subject matter experts, to inform their opinions about things like organ donation and things like that. So it's very important to have.
Assalamu alaikum, jazakallah khair. MashaAllah, it's a beautiful representation and great information. Thank you, Dr. Bashar, for all the history you brought us back to many years. It's beautiful. It sounded like this is the first conference you guys are going to have in July. Now, I heard you talking about the goal is to bring scholars, experts, skills, different kind of skills from the Islamic. Now, the real goal basically is to spread that, like Dr. Bashar said, it's like adwa, spread that like a, not disease, in a good way, all around. So I did not, or maybe I missed, I have not heard the goal, how you're going to spread this over to the non-Muslim, or to Memphis community, the non-Muslim, or to the state or the US. What is the goal, the vision to shine the light on not only our history, but of what we are doing? And Jazakallah.
Jazakallah for your question. I think it's an excellent question. There's two components to this whole project. One is obviously engaging in these kind of works instills confidence within our own people that we don't have to shy away from our identity, because this is what we descend from, and we can still maintain our identity as Muslim and be productive and be recognized for our work. But the second component is this is 100% a form of da'wah to everyone, because the research, the presentations, the publications that we're talking about, we're not proposing a strictly Muslim avenue where this is all published and it's only a Muslim audience. We want to get these things published in top medical journals. We want to get these things published in journals, in newspapers, and websites that everybody is reading. That is the whole purpose behind this. I'm with you completely, my brother, where the whole purpose of this is to mobilize Muslims to not only represent to themselves, but also to the outside. And inshallah, we are starting in Memphis. But the crowd that we are inviting is from across the country. The speakers that we are inviting is from across the country. The students, we have, alhamdulillah, a team of college students and high school reaching out to MSAs across the nation. We're doing our best to spread the word of this to every corner of this country. And inshallah, we want to reach a point where we can work with teams from different Muslim countries, because this is a movement that shouldn't know the borders of a single country. The concept of a nation state, that's not an Islamic concept. That was a way that was introduced that broke our people apart. We don't want to restrict ourselves within those borders. So ultimately, the vision is through presentations, through research, through social media content, through all the content that's produced, we want to publicize it in every avenue that is available to us to amplify our voices, to increase the representation of Muslims and Islam in all these academic areas. And just as a last point to that, I think Islamically, we know how we feel about this whole LGBTQ and trans agenda. But one thing you have to recognize is that although this population represents less than 0.5% of the entire U.S. population, they know how to amplify their voices. They know how to promote their agenda, and you would think, if you were coming to this country for the first time, you would think that, wow, half the country must be part of this. Like, they must be everywhere. But personally, I barely met like 2, 3, but they know how to amplify their voices. There's 2 billion of us. There's no reason why even the common man, this whole project we intentionally created so even like the common man, the most lay general community man can get involved in this. Because we're encouraging presentations, just conversation. It can happen in masjid, it can happen in your local church, it can happen at work. We want to quantify and keep track of all of that. We want everybody to be involved, because if they can use these tools, it's not like these tools aren't at our disposal. Why should we hide? Why should we hold back? So that's exactly where we're going with this. We want to spread this vision everywhere that we can, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Sisters, are there any questions? I hear conversations up there, so there must be questions. No? Okay, there were several questions here.
So I would like to
No,
just
no,
point out.
I am the oldest, so I will be at the end. So
Yes.
so
I don't know if everybody met Sheikh Burhan, but he's one of the most beloved people to my heart, and one of the most beloved, shuyukh that come to our community and our guests, and it's always a pleasure to have Sheikh Burhan here.
Well, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm pleased to be here, honestly speaking, to see this vision, carrying the mission, inshallah, coupled with actions. I can see 2 generations. Dr. Bashar, that brought the old world here, but renewing it. And the young man perhaps born here, which says a lot. This concern is not a local concern, or a state concern, or a country concern. It's a concern of the entire ummah. And it's very nice to see, and I wish more people here. And I'm sure as time goes by, others will join, inshallah ta'ala. So this is a beautiful work. I'm from Albania, from Europe, and this is the concern of all of us. And what you're doing is a spark that, inshallah ta'ala, will lead to have a beacon of light, because a beacon of light serves all the ships, small and large, and helping them not to get crashed. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you success and bring you, inshallah ta'ala, those and all the other people around here to follow suit with you. This is not your job, it is our job. Job of all generations, all countries, all people. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you success, inshallah. وَنَرَكُمْ عَلَى خَيْرٍ دَائِمًا. Next time I will see, inshallah, more activities here and beyond this beautiful edifice that you have built, which says a lot. And this state of yours is the country of ours and the world of ours, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum jami'an.
Anybody else? Did you have a question? You sure?
So I don't have a question, but more of an answer to what was brought up earlier, that some shayukh were against scientific discovery and this and that. So this intellectual dispute, this has always been in existence, and it even exists today in the modern Western civilization. Look at the issue of abortion. Like, some people have one view on it. You know, this much is fetus, this one is not fetus, this, that. So all these intellectual disputes, they had always been there, and they will always be there because our minds think differently. And as a law student or a legal profession, I can tell you that the U.S. Supreme Court overrules itself again and again. Like 10 years ago, they had one opinion. 10 years later, they have a totally different opinion. So that happens a lot. Like the evolution of thought, that happens constantly. So that's very normal. Like if somebody tells you this, oh, Muslims were against this, yes, there might be a faction. They had a different thought process than the other group. And that happens today, even again with the US Supreme Court. And I have like, when I do the presentation, I'll show you hundreds of examples of happening that again and again. But I just wanted to answer it.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, if there are no further questions, then yeah, Jazakallah khair. Jazakumullah khair for sticking with us for this long. Sorry we went over time a little bit, but inshallah, you see, this is an inspiring and inshallah achievable goal if we stick with it. Jazakumullah khair. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Thank you.
Very